Welcome to Woodbrook. It may not look like much from the outside, but it's a special place. A place that appreciates lemonade in the summer and spiced cider in the fall. A cozy fire in the winter and a fresh breeze after the first rains of spring. A place where you can deal with the day in your own time, floating on the scent of cedar, rosemary, and clover. Today on the Comic Book Report, Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees by Patrick Horvath. Stick around and check it out. Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today we're talking about Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees by Patrick Horvath from IDW. And wow, is this series something else? A juxtaposition I never thought I would encounter that left me riveted all the way through. I cannot wait to dive in and talk about today's collection, but before I do, I just want to say a huge thank you to IDW for sending over this review copy in exchange for this honest review. This again was a huge treat and I can't wait to dive in, so without further ado, let's get started. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written and illustrated by Patrick Horvath. The issues in this collection were published by IDW Publishing beginning in 2023. The volume itself collects Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, issues 1 through 6. And finally, this is a standard size trade paperback with glossy print paper stock, a glued binding, and a total of 152 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first dedicated look at the cover for today's trade paperback collection. This is a standard size trade paperback. I know IDW, I believe, released a special edition hardcover on their website exclusively. I obviously don't have that edition, but I believe it's available in that format as well. But I love what they did with the trade paperback design. I love that they retained the color on the spine as well. It just looks really crisp and nice. I also love that we get an impression of Horvath's unique art style on the cover of the trade. I just think it's a really great idea to see a bit and a sampling of what you can expect within the pages, but wow, is it even more than I even hoped. As we transition to the back cover of this trade paperback as well, we have kind of an idyllic view of the town, and yet there is something insidious just in this image, and it really speaks to the quality we have in the comic itself. There's an unsettling nature to this comic that also somehow still feels warm and fuzzy. I'll get to that once we get into this comic book review more fully as we flip through, but this really is a fascinating juxtaposition of so many different tones, feelings, ideas, imagery, and it's just something wild. And now for all you prospective collectors out there, just a quick look at today's binding. As I mentioned, this is a glued binding. It's just a standard trade paperback, so minimal gutter loss. I really had no issues with my binding. I thought it laid open quite well, all things considered. And yeah, I just generally wanted everyone to have a good idea of how it was bound. And with that, we can go ahead and transition. Okay, and now as we make our way into today's standard size trade paperback collection, we have that beautiful cover page, as we said. Then we have a title page, publication information page, and then essentially we go into the very first issue of this 6-issue series. Luckily, we do have the covers reproduced here, which is always nice to see. Okay, let me just set up this whole series for all of you. I had heard so much buzz about this little run here at IDW. I've seen other channels kind of cover it. I've kind of skimmed those videos because I didn't want to spoil anything for myself. As I mentioned, for my review, this will be a spoiler-filled review. You've already been warned. But what is Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees? Well, essentially, it's a 6-issue miniseries, and my comparison or kind of description of what this is, it feels like an Aesop's Fable meets Dexter. It's essentially about a serial killer who tries to hunt down another serial killer in this small town, but everything is drawn with these beautiful kind of anthropomorphized animals that really it lulls me into this false sense of security. The visual style feels in some ways reminiscent of like Richard Scarry's stuff, if you ever read those books or saw the animated series way back when. It also feels like kind of the art I would expect from kind of like a book of fables, these kind of little animal-like creatures. There's something almost cutesy or warm or Americana somehow about the imagery, and yet it's juxtaposed with this frighteningly scary murder mystery narrative, and everything just feels so deeply insidious and creepy. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. So essentially what this series is about, it follows predominantly our main character, who is this woman bear character who basically owns kind of the general store in this small town. They're about to celebrate some kind of commemorative year for their small city, and they're doing like a bunch of parade floats and things like that. So of course her general store is quite busy, and you find out that she's kind of a cornerstone in this small community, but on the side she does travel into the city and indiscriminately murders a stranger or two here and there, and dismembers the bodies, kind of buries them, and she presumably has been doing this for some time, and everything else in her life is kind of a mask or facade in some way. She's definitely a socio-psychopathic kind of character, but she really doesn't try to disrupt the status quo in her home city, her home life. She does all of this nasty murdering business in the big city and doesn't want anything to follow her back home. Unfortunately for her, on the day of the parade celebration, we basically have one of the townsfolk murdered and drawn up on one of the parade floats, to the horror of all the citizenry in this small town. From here on, we have everything kind of spiraling out of control in this small community. We have old tensions rise to the surface. We have everyone at a hysteria, kind of fever pitch, trying to basically find out who the murderer is. Everyone's deeply suspicious of each other. At one point, we think it leads to this townsperson or that townsperson, and honestly, that's really what most of the series is about at this point. It's trying to find who the real killer is, and in the case of our favorite bear here, them trying to stop this murderer before their clumsy murders lead bigger authority figures to her own doorstep, and maybe her alibis don't always check out, and they might discover what she's been up to for several years. Across the 6 issues, we get to know different townspeople, some of her relationships, again, kind of her role in this community, and we get to see a lot of these relationships unravel. We get to see the fragility in many of them, some strength in others, and along the way, one by one, we have more townspeople brutally slaughtered and murdered. For example, there's a female pig character that gets, I think, beheaded at one point. We have another character that's suspected as the murder victim, but we find out that she kind of has made a doll of her deceased husband and has her own secrets behind closed doors. Anyway, a lot of interesting twists and turns, but again, we get kind of a psychological profile of so many of the people in this town. It's also cool to see our main character play detective and use all of her cunning and guile to try to root out who this other murderer is. And ultimately, and again, spoilers, but it leads really to the doorstep of one of her oldest friends. This older mouse character has a, I think, nephew or grandson or something who comes in and out of town, and we find out that he has been the one, this little mouse guy, who has been going around and murdering people in the small town. In addition to that revelation, we find out that he actually has known about the bear's exploits and wanted to get her attention. The bear is, of course, furious and wants him to get off the board as far as the playing field here and leave. He feels betrayed and belittled by her and ultimately tries to frame her for all the murders. In fact, he digs up some of the bodies she has buried and essentially leads the authorities directly to her door. And this is really the huge climax of the work, where she's basically pinned down and she tries to get out of it, clear her name while framing this guy for more than just what he's done. And we have just a stunning conclusion here. She ends up taking out pretty much everyone at this point, everyone that threatens her. Even her oldest friend, unfortunately, gets caught in the crossfire. She believes that she has to take her down to help continue to draw out this main murderer throughout the series. And then basically, after this all happens, everything kind of returns to the status quo in this small town, and no one is left alive who suspects what she's really up to. Again, this is such a kind of creepy and haunting series. I think Insidious is the best word for it. There's just so much just beneath the veneer, just beneath the skin of this small town series. And yeah, the characters are all really fascinating. I think being in the head of kind of the sociopathic, psychopathic character was disturbing and troubling to say the least. You pair that with the gorgeous visuals we have also from Patrick Horvath here. It's just a really striking contrast of what we're seeing visually and kind of what we're experiencing with the dialogue. And even when they do depict the scenes of violence, it's just really unsettling. And I don't know how else to describe it. And yet it is such a wonderful final product, especially if you're a fan of this genre, the kind of psychological thriller, murder mystery with a dark edge. This is definitely some truly astounding, I would say. I also really like, every so often he would bring in other animal characters that were not anthropomorphized. Like we'd have a regular bear walk out of the woods. I'm not really sure what the intention was here, maybe to just show kind of the animalistic nature of the character. I don't know, it just lent a kind of depth to this world I didn't expect. But yeah, it's just a really, really gripping book. I absolutely see why this was such a rave-reviewed series, and I am happy I dodged some of the plot details until I was able to read it myself. But I hope if you're enjoying this video and you have yet to read it, that you still give it a chance. My review here, I've definitely left out a good handful of moments and details, so I really hope you check it out for yourself, because this one, like I said, is something pretty rare. My understanding is that this is one of Horvath's premier works, although after reading this, I will certainly try to follow his career more closely. Like I said, this was a stunning little series, and what he was able to accomplish and pay off within these 6 issues, just really well done. Again, for fans of this genre, this is one to check out. If you like the art, this is also one to follow. I think the art is easily one of the most inventive and fun I've had visually with a comic in a minute. And again, the fact that he pairs it with just a twisted dark murder mystery genre is just a real masterstroke. Something really evocative and just interesting. And as we make our way toward the back end of this collection, luckily we do have a little bit of extras, which I was really excited to see. We have kind of a cover art or variant cover art gallery. It is a little thumbnailized. We don't have a ton full paged, which I would have loved to see, but I am happy we still got some of these covers included at the back as kind of a bonus feature. And we even got some artistic kind of models, character models, things like that, and about the author page. Again, it's not an overwhelming amount of extras, but for a trade paperback, I was happy to see any included. And that's really going to round out this collection from IDW, a really brilliant little book, I thought, Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. And now all that's left to do is to give this trade paperback a grade. Brilliantly blending a gorgeous art style with a truly twisted murder mystery tale, The Comic Book Report is happy to give Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees by Patrick Horvath from IDW an A. This was an excellent piece of fiction that had me riveted from moment one all the way through its stunning conclusion. I haven't read its like in comic books in some time, and I understand all the hype this series has gotten. In fact, it's safe to say I clearly agree. But this, of course, is just one man's opinion. I would love to hear yours. I know so many people have been reading this series, and I'd love to hear if you've read Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. What did you think about this book? Did you love it? Did you not so much? What were some things that stood out to you? Let me hear all about it in the comments section. Perhaps this is a book you're considering reading now or have never heard about. I'd love to hear you chime in as well. And to all of you out there who are still listening, a huge thank you for taking the journey with me today, and another special thank you to those at IDW for sending this review copy in exchange for this honest review. Thank you so much, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave this video a like, that comment we talked about, and maybe check out another one of my videos on your way out. Thanks, and have a good one.